One.
Get out.
Get out of the car. Out of the car.
Get out of the car.
Get out of the car. Get out of the car.
Get out of the car.
I'm telling you now.
You got 5 seconds. Baden, go ahead and get him.
You not wanting to get up?
Nope.
Okay. Hey, you got 5 seconds to get out or I'm smashing your window.
Either give us your driver's license or your window's gonna get busted.
He's telling me that's a curve and this is clearly a different street he's turning on.
One.
Get out.
Get out of the car. Out of the car.
Get out of the car.
Get
out of the car.
Get out of the car.
Get out of the car.
Get out of the car.
I'm gonna smash your window, dude. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The sound of shattering glass. A man's voice, calm but defiant, cutting through the chaos. You're going to pay for this. Within seconds, what started as a routine traffic stop in a quiet Connecticut neighborhood erupted into a violent confrontation that would ignite a firestorm of controversy, spark a federal civil rights investigation, and force an entire police department to answer one simple question: when does officer safety end and constitutional violation begin? This is the story of Victor Davis, a man who refused to hand over his ID for what he believed was an illegal stop. It's the story of officers who escalated a minor traffic infraction into a full-scale use of force incident in under 3 minutes. And it's a case study in how a single decision, a single moment of defiance can unravel into a legal battle that exposes the thin line between lawful authority and potential civil rights abuse. Because what happened on a cold January evening in Stamford, Connecticut wasn't just about a turn signal. It was about power, procedure, and the price of standing your ground when you believe you've done nothing wrong. Before we dive into the breakdown, if you're here because you care about accountability, transparency, and understanding what really happens when bodycam footage contradicts the official narrative, hit that subscribe button. This channel exists because of viewers like you who refuse to look away when the system is tested. Drop a comment below with your take, because this case isn't black and white and your perspective matters. Now let's get into it. Victor Davis wasn't a stranger to Stamford. He'd lived in the area his entire life. He knew the streets, the neighborhoods, the shortcuts, and the cops. On this particular January evening in 2024, he was driving through a familiar part of town with his friend Ricky in the passenger seat. The roads were quiet, traffic was light. Davis made a right turn from Oliver Street onto Haskell Street, a maneuver he'd made countless times before. He didn't use his turn signal. But here's the thing. Oliver Street only allows one direction of travel at that intersection. Right. There's no left turn option, no straight through option, just right onto Haskell. In Davis's mind, signaling a turn when there's no other possible direction made no sense. It was a technicality at best, a pretext at worst, and that's when the lights came on behind him. Officer Graham of the Stamford Police Department initiated the stop. His dash cam was rolling. His body cam was recording. Everything that happened next would be captured in real time, frame by frame, word by word. As Davis pulled over, his mind was already racing. He'd been stopped before. He'd seen how these interactions could go, and in his gut, he felt something was off. This wasn't about a turn signal. This was about something else. Officer Graham approached the driver's side window with the calm, practiced tone of someone who'd done this 1,000 times before. Good evening. What's up? Hi, I'm Officer Graham with the Stamford Police Department. Can I see your driver's license and proof of insurance, please? It was a standard opening line, delivered without hostility, without aggression, just procedure. But Victor Davis didn't see procedure. He saw pretense. His response came immediately, sharp and pointed. For what? Officer Graham repeated the request, explaining that Davis was being stopped because he didn't use a turn signal. Davis's tone shifted from questioning to confrontational. For what? Where? The officer clarified. Back on Oliver, when Davis turned onto Haskell. Davis fired back, his voice rising slightly. I turned on Oliver to Haskell, not a turn. And there it was. The first crack in the conversation. The first moment where two people, standing just feet apart, saw the same event in completely different ways. To Officer Graham, the law was clear. Any change in direction requires a signal, even if it's the only direction available. To Victor Davis, the officer's reasoning was absurd. You don't signal a turn when the road only goes one way. And in his mind, that meant the stop itself was illegal, which meant he had no obligation to comply. Officer Graham remained calm, repeating his request for identification and proof of insurance. Davis refused. I need your driver's license and proof of insurance, the officer said again, his voice steady but firm. Davis didn't budge. budge. The officer tried once more, a little louder this time, a little more insistent. "I'm not going to argue with you." And that's when Davis escalated. "Oh, you going to call your chief?" he said, his tone dripping with challenge. Officer Graham's response was immediate and unambiguous. "No, I'm not. You're going to step out of the car, both of y'all. Hop out." Let's pause here for a second because this is where the legal framework comes into play, and it's critical to understand what's happening beneath the surface. In the United States, the Supreme Court case Pennsylvania versus Mimms established that police officers have the authority to order a driver and even passengers out of a vehicle during a lawful traffic stop, regardless of whether there's a safety concern. The reasoning is officer safety. The ruling is settled law. But here's the catch. The stop itself has to be lawful. If the initial reason for the stop is pretextual, or if it's later determined to be unlawful, then everything that follows, every command, every use of force, can be called into question. And that's exactly what Victor Davis believed in this moment. He wasn't refusing to comply because he wanted to be difficult. He was refusing because, in his view, the officer had no legal right to stop him in the first place. Officer Graham didn't see it that way. To him, the stop was valid, the request was lawful, and Davis's refusal was obstruction. He opened the driver's side door without permission, a move that immediately escalated the tension. Davis's voice rose. "My door without my permission." The officer repeated the command. "Get out of the car." Davis doubled down. "Call my chief. Call the chief." The officer's patience was thinning. "Either get out of the car or you're going to get charged for interference." Davis's response was defiant, almost daring. "You call the chief. Take me to jail. How much so I can sue your ass?" The standoff was now in full swing. Officer Graham tried to explain the law, citing case law that requires a driver to exit the vehicle when ordered. Davis wasn't interested. "You ain't got to step out of no vehicle just 'cause you tell me." The officer's reply was blunt. "Okay, then I'm going to drag you out." Davis didn't flinch. "Then come drag me out." The officer, now fully committed to the use of force, turned to his partner. "Okay, if you insist, hop out of the car." He called for backup over the radio, requesting additional units. The scene was about to explode. At this point, Ricky, the passenger, was still in the vehicle, watching the confrontation unfold. Officer Graham ordered him out too. "Hop out, Ricky. Come on." Ricky hesitated, clearly uncomfortable, but not yet defiant. Davis, sensing his friend's unease, told him not to interfere. "Ricky, don't do anything, don't interfere." But the officers weren't interested in selective compliance. They wanted both men out of the car, and they wanted it now. "I'm going to start breaking windows, man. Get out of the car, both of y'all." The countdown began. Officer Graham, now standing at the driver's side window, gave Davis a final warning. "You got 5 seconds to get out or I'm smashing your window." Davis didn't move. The officer began counting down. 5 seconds. 5, 4, I'm going to smash your window. 3, 2, 1. And then the crash. Glass exploded into the car. The officers reached in, unlocking the door, pulling at Davis's arms. "Get out of the car! Get out of the car! Keep your hands where we can see them!" But Victor Davis wasn't going quietly. As the officers pulled him from the vehicle, the bodycam footage becomes chaotic. Voices overlap. Commands are shouted. Davis is resisting, not by running, but by refusing to submit his body to their control. The officers later allege that he swung at them, an act that would justify the use of a taser. The footage is grainy, the angle unclear, but the sound is unmistakable. The electric crackle of the taser deployment. Davis's voice strained but still defiant. "You're going to pay for this. Your daddy going to hear about this boy." The officers wrestled him to the ground, forcing his hands behind his back. "Let go of my flashlight," one officer yells, suggesting Davis had grabbed or was holding on to equipment during the struggle. Ricky, still nearby, was pleading. "Y'all stop, please." Within moments, it was over. Victor Davis was in handcuffs, face down on the pavement, breathing hard. Ricky was standing to the side, hands visible, clearly shaken. The officers were catching their breath, adrenaline still pumping, and the body cam kept rolling, capturing every word of the aftermath. Davis, even in custody, wasn't backing down. "I got a witness to this. You have no reason to stop me. That's no stop sign. No turn, no nothing. I've been here all my life, boy." One of the officers, still worked up from the confrontation, shot back. "You're an idiot, dude." Davis's response was icy. "No, you going to pay for this." Now, let's talk about what happened next, because this is where the legal machine kicks into gear. Victor Davis was arrested and charged with multiple offenses: assault on a peace officer, interfering with police, and failure to signal. On paper, these are serious charges. Assault on a peace officer alone can carry significant penalties, including jail time. But here's the thing. The charges are only as strong as the justification for the stop. If the stop was unlawful, if the officers lacked reasonable suspicion or probable cause, then everything that followed, the broken window, window, the taser, the arrest could be deemed unconstitutional, and that's exactly what Davis and his legal team would argue. In the days and weeks following the arrest, the Bodycam footage began to circulate. It wasn't released by the department initially. Rather, it was obtained through public records requests and shared online. And once it hit the internet, it spread like wildfire. Social media lit up with reactions. Some viewers saw a man defending his constitutional rights against overreach. Others saw a man who escalated a minor traffic stop into a violent confrontation by refusing to comply with lawful orders. The comment sections became battlegrounds, with users debating the legality of the stop, the appropriateness of the force, and the broader implications of racial profiling in policing. Because let's be clear, race is a subtext in this case that cannot be ignored. Victor Davis is a black man. Officer Graham is white. And while the body cam footage doesn't include any overtly racist language or behavior, Davis himself has stated publicly that he believes the stop was racially motivated. He believes he was targeted because of the color of his skin, stopped for a minor technicality that would have been overlooked if he were white. The department denies this, pointing to the objective fact that Davis failed to signal, regardless of whether the turn was the only option. But the perception, the lived experience, the historical context of racial profiling in American policing, all of that adds weight to Davis's claim. And it's a claim that resonates with millions of people who've had similar experiences, who've been pulled over for driving while black, who've felt the sting of suspicion without cause. The Stamford Police Department issued a statement defending the officer's actions. According to the department, Officer Graham conducted a lawful traffic stop based on a clear violation of Connecticut traffic law. When Davis refused to provide identification and exit the vehicle, the officers were within their rights to use force to compel compliance. The use of the taser, the department argued, was justified because Davis allegedly swung at the officers, an act of aggression that posed a threat to officer safety. The department also emphasized that the officers followed established protocols, including giving multiple warnings and attempting verbal de-escalation before resorting to physical force. But not everyone was convinced. Civil rights advocates and legal experts began scrutinizing the footage, raising questions about whether the stop was truly lawful, whether the officer's escalation was proportionate, and whether there were alternative de-escalation strategies that could have been employed. Some pointed out that the officers could have simply issued a citation and let Davis go, rather than forcing a confrontation over identification. Others noted that the passenger, Ricky, was ordered out of the vehicle for no clear reason related to officer safety, potentially violating his Fourth Amendment rights. And then there's the question of the turn signal itself. If the road only allows one direction of travel, is a signal even required? Connecticut traffic law states that a driver must signal any change in direction, but legal scholars have debated whether a forced turn on a one-way exit qualifies as a discretionary turn requiring a signal. These aren't just academic questions, they have real-world consequences. If the stop is deemed unlawful, Davis's charges could be dismissed. If the use of force is deemed excessive, the officers could face discipline, and the city could face a civil lawsuit. And if the case goes to trial, a jury will have to weigh the evidence, the testimony, and the footage, and decide who was right and who was wrong in those critical moments. As of now, the case remains under review. The department has not announced any findings from its internal investigation. Victor Davis has not been convicted of any charges. The legal process is ongoing and both sides are preparing for a fight. But regardless of the outcome, the damage is done. The video is out there, the opinions are formed, and the trust between the community and the police, already fragile, has taken another hit. Let's zoom out for a moment and talk about what this case represents in the bigger picture. Traffic stops are the most common form of police-citizen interaction in the United States. Millions happen every year. The vast majority are routine, uneventful, and end with a ticket or a warning. But a small percentage escalate into confrontations, and an even smaller percentage result in violence. The question is, why? What turns a routine stop into a crisis? And is there a way to prevent it? Part of the answer lies in mutual understanding, or the lack thereof. When an officer pulls someone over, they're operating within a legal framework that grants them significant authority. They can demand identification. They can order you out of your vehicle. They can search your car under certain circumstances. From the officer's perspective, compliance is not optional. It's required by law, and refusal is obstruction. But from the driver's perspective, especially if they believe the stop is unjust, compliance feels like submission to injustice. It feels like giving up your rights, surrendering your dignity, accepting a system that treats you as guilty until proven innocent. And that tension, that clash of perspectives, is where things go wrong. There's also the issue of training and discretion. Police officers are taught to control the situation, to assert authority, to minimize risk. But they're also supposed to be trained in de-escalation, in communication, in recognizing when a situation can be resolved without force. In this case, the officers went from verbal commands to breaking a window in under 3 minutes. Was that the only option? Could they have called a supervisor, as Davis requested? Could they have issued a citation and walked away, even if Davis refused to provide ID on the spot? These are the questions that will be debated in courtrooms and city council meetings and online forums for months to come. And then there's the racial dimension. Study after study has shown that black drivers are disproportionately stopped, searched, and subjected to force during traffic stops. This isn't speculation, it's data. And while not every stop is motivated by race, the pattern is undeniable. When Victor Davis accused Officer Graham of racial profiling, he wasn't pulling that claim out of thin air. He was drawing on a lifetime of experiences, a community history, a national reality. And whether or not this specific stop was racially motivated, the fact that it felt that way to Davis is significant. It speaks to a broader breakdown of trust, a systemic issue that can't be solved with body cams and policies alone. So where are we now? Victor Davis is awaiting his day in court. The officers involved remain on active duty. The Stamford Police Department is conducting its review, though the timeline for completion is unclear, and the public is watching, waiting to see if justice will be served, whatever that means in this context. For some, justice is holding Davis accountable for his actions. For others, it's holding the officers accountable for theirs. And for many, it's hoping that something, anything, changes so that the next traffic stop doesn't end in broken glass and broken trust. But let's also address the criticisms, because not everyone sees Victor Davis as a victim. Some argue that he escalated the situation by refusing to comply with lawful orders. They point out that if he had simply provided his ID and exited the vehicle, none of this would have happened. They argue that the officers were doing their job, following the law, and had no choice but to use force when Davis resisted. And they're not entirely wrong. The law does give officers the authority to compel compliance during a traffic stop. And refusal, even if it's based on a sincere belief that the stop is unlawful, can lead to arrest and additional charges. The legal system provides remedies for unjust stops, but those remedies are supposed to be pursued after the fact in court, not on the side of the road. On the other hand, critics of this perspective argue that expecting perfect compliance from every citizen, especially in communities that have been over-policed and underprotected, is unrealistic and unjust. They point out that the system only works if people trust it, and trust is earned, not demanded. They argue that officers have a responsibility to de-escalate, to recognize when their actions are inflaming a situation rather than resolving it. And they ask, is a failure to signal really worth breaking a window, deploying a taser, and arresting someone? Is that proportional? Is that justice? These are hard questions, and there are no easy answers. But that's exactly why cases like this matter. They force us to confront the complexities of policing, the tensions between authority and rights, the reality of systemic bias, and the human cost of getting it wrong. Here's what we know for sure. Victor Davis was stopped for failing to signal a turn on a road where turning was the only option. He refused to provide identification because he believed the stop was unlawful and racially motivated. Officers escalated the situation by breaking his window and using a taser. He was arrested and charged with multiple offenses. The case is under review, and the video has sparked a national conversation about traffic stops, use of force, and racial profiling. Everything else, the motivations, the justifications, the ultimate outcome, is still being decided. But the lesson here is universal. Whether you're a driver, an officer, a lawyer, or just someone trying to understand how the system works, this case is a reminder that every interaction, every decision, every moment of tension carries consequences. For Victor Davis, those consequences include criminal charges, legal fees, and a traumatic experience that will stay with him for the rest of his life. For the officers, those consequences include public scrutiny, potential discipline, and the weight of knowing that their actions are now part of a national debate. For the community, those consequences include further erosion of trust, further division, further evidence that the system isn't working the way it's supposed to. And for all of us, the lesson is this: we have to do better. We have to find a way to balance authority with accountability, safety with dignity, law with justice. We have to train officers to see de-escalation as strength, not weakness. We have to empower citizens to know their rights without fearing for their lives. And we have to create systems that address injustice without requiring people to risk everything just to be heard. Because if we don't, if we keep repeating the same patterns, having the same arguments, watching the same videos, then nothing will change. And the next Victor Davis, the next traffic stop, the next broken window will be just another story that goes viral, sparks outrage, and fades away without making a difference. So here's my challenge to you. Don't let this be just another video you watch and forget. Think about what you saw. Think about what you would have done. Think about what you want the system to look like. And then do something. Comment below with your perspective. Share this video with someone who needs to see it. And if you believe in accountability, transparency, and change, hit that subscribe button so we can keep shining a light on the stories that matter. Victor Davis stood his ground. Whether you agree with his choices or not, he believed he was right, and he was willing to pay the price for that belief. Now it's up to the courts, the community, and all of us to decide what that price should be, and whether the system that demanded it is one worth defending. Thanks for watching. Stay informed, stay engaged, and never stop asking questions. This video is for educational and informational purposes only and does not constitute legal advice.